All right. Well, welcome everyone. Super excited today to take you through the engagement in numbers. So I'll give a little bit of background about myself, and then we'll switch to the panelists. My name is Raiford Cockfield, CEO and co-founder of Yup.gg. Formerly, I was head of Asia Pacific for Twitch, so I certainly know the region, the platform, the growth, the explosiveness of gaming and esports in Asia Pacific and globally. Let's go through the panel and just get a quick intro. So, Jason, I think we already know about you. Battlefy CEO, one of the largest gaming platforms on the planet, now expanding into Asia, as Nick has politely called him out for in front of the audience. And Adam?
I'm Chief Commercial Officer of Singapore Sports Hub, which is about 3 kilometres that way. So we're a precinct of venues from a 55,000-seat national stadium, 12,000-seat arena. It's called the Singapore Indoor Stadium, and a number of other venues. We are a consortium in a public-private partnership with government to build a portfolio of events that's diverse for Singapore, and I wear 2 hats. As it's a public-private partnership, on the one hand, I try to drive revenue for the shareholders, and on the other hand, on the government side, obviously try to meet the objectives the government have with a piece of social infrastructure. Singapore only has 1 national stadium. It only has 1 arena. If there's of that scale, if there's an event over 5,000 people, it will come to our venues. So in the esports space, we're new to it. Events generally, we've had over 420 event days last year. This year we're on track to beat that number. We've had a couple of esports events last year, and we're excited that this year we'll have a Dota 2 Invitational in December with 1eSports teaming up with PGL to bring that to the indoor stadium. And they've just announced a couple of exciting teams, so really looking forward to that. And yeah, I guess that's basically where we sit.
Great. So Adam is definitely up here to talk more about the direct venue and professional management and why it's key to be in esports and gaming. But next we have one of the content creators related to gaming. So co-founder of Smosh Games, Mari Takahashi. Can you take us through a little bit of why you ended up here? What's your background?
Sure. Gaming was an industry I never really thought that I would be in, to be honest. I was a professional ballet dancer. I thought that that was going to be the career path that I would stay on until the day I couldn't dance anymore. I started making YouTube content with Smosh, which is one of the largest and longest running comedy brands on YouTube, about a decade ago. And 2 years after that, I co-founded Smosh Games in an effort to combine the comedy that we already had on the channel, but really lean into gaming, which was just starting to gain popularity on YouTube.
And what year was that, sorry?
That was in 2012.
Sorry to date you, just, yeah, give some
No,
reference.
I'm so proud of the fact that we were early adopters. And, you know, I think the time is now to really get into gaming if you're not already in it, because it's in its infancy. We're seeing, you know, just like the crest of it at the moment. And I think there's so much more that's going to be apparent in the gaming industry. We're a perfect example of being able to be in the gaming industry without going the esports way. We are essentially comedians who have a good time playing video games whilst being very average at it. But I think one of the greatest successes we've had on the channel is being able to scale experiences, and that's the experience of just having fun playing games.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for the audience, I'm certain a lot of you have experience in games and esports. That's why you're sitting here. But there is a very big and meaningful difference between esports and gaming. When you speak about esports, the way that I like to kind of speak to a crowd is, that's like the NBA. So either if you wanted to invest in basketball, you would have grassroots camps, you would have training facilities, college, European League, Asia League, etc. It's a massive market, over $77 billion. Esports itself is just around $2 billion, but it's the highest form of professional competition. So, Jason, little bit about esports and why is it so important and why is it so engaging to so many members, and maybe revisit just exactly how big the audiences are that you see related to Battlefy.
Yeah. So I'll answer in two different forms. So the first is why is esports important? And so it goes back into sort of the cultural phenomenon again with the generational shift of content creation and content consumption. Competition is going to be part of society. Fandom is going to be part of society. There's people who are going to be much better than us in certain things, and we want to revere in that. And so that's what really pushes playership and viewership in esports. Today, I think in any given month, there's anywhere between 200 to 250 million active esports players around the globe every single day. And that's just growing. And of course, most of these players are in the traditional platforms like PC and console. We're not even including mobile numbers into this. So in the next 2 years, and this is one of our biggest projections, is that that number is going to either double or triple into about half to 3/4 million active players a month when mobile, 5G, and streaming platforms and technologies actually substantiate themselves within the industry. So it is the right time to be looking at it.
Awesome. And Adam, so you've really made a decision to invest in esports. What are you hoping to get out of it? Where is the tie and the connection between Sports Hub and esports, and where does it go?
I think there's a number of reasons for it. I think Sports Hub is a sport, entertainment, lifestyle destination, and esports, I think, ticks each of those particular buckets. So it has a huge audience. It's an audience that is growing, and therefore it's an obvious opportunity for us from a commercial perspective. I think also, in terms of, again, putting on my government hat, it's a great way of engaging with the youth, and I think moving forward it's going to be more so. So in both respects, I think that it's been important for Sports Hub to head into that direction. From an infrastructure perspective, it's obviously very challenging, I think, within esports because most of the venues that are out there, certainly ours, and ours is quite a modern facility, but when government first went out to tender for it was in the 2000s, and I don't think esports was in the thinking of many countries at that particular time from an infrastructure perspective. So in terms of the $1.3+ billion that was invested in building the infrastructure, it wasn't built with esports in mind. So like many places around the world, the venue has to either accommodate through significant costs of overlaying the infrastructure requirements for an esports event, or we need to go through a process of retrofitting. So that's a conversation that we are having at the moment, and really I think we're testing the water a little bit to see what the market can support in terms of the number of events that we have to work out whether that investment is required. I think maybe going back to a step and perhaps touching on a point that Jason made, I think that it's actually like esports has moved so fast that it hasn't followed the pathway of traditional sport in the sense of people are competing already online within a digital space and then able to monetize those media rights without actually having an event, whereas generally the process you go through is a contest. You have it on a field of play, you attract an audience to it, you sell tickets, you bring the cameras down, you broadcast it out, and then you try to amplify the monetization of that sport through media rights and the sponsorship growth that goes through the eyeballs. Esports has kind of skipped the event step, and now it's actually trying to retrospectively go back and bring the event into the equation. So in terms of an event at a venue like ours, I think the people are still experimenting with what works and what won't work. So it's not unique in terms of the types of things that people come to an event for, and I think a lot can be borrowed from other sports in that respect. So enjoying an event is part of it. It's a social experience. There's obviously the scale through massive screens, sound, production, those types of things. There's being in the same room as your heroes, and those types of things that you can't really get in your room watching it on a device. So I think it is actually an interesting time, and one of the things that I think that in markets like Singapore that we need to look at is really around building venues that are perhaps purpose-built, smaller audience, so that we can actually not just have those tier 1 events that you're talking about, but the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 events, domestic competitions, underage competitions, regional leagues, these types of things, to try to develop the ecosystem that sits beneath these major commercial events, but also builds a pathway, I think, for talent to come through. And again, that's a way of actually connecting with the youth, and those people are going to develop and turn into 35, 40, 45-year-olds and have more money in their pocket that we can then monetize at that particular point. So there is a more strategic play that I think needs to be made by venues like ours.
Excellent. And that raises a few important points that then we'll switch over to Mari, so get ready. But the monetization around it, a lot of it is built on investment now, infrastructure investment now, and improvement. There is a lot of money to be earned, and there's something that I'd like to switch to Mari about. He spoke a little bit about this interaction with audience, and I think it's interesting to point out to the audience, especially if you're thinking about investing in esports, that difference between traditional sport and online gaming and esports is we've always felt connected audience to player because they've always been in the room with you while you create content. Can you take us through a little bit about the process of content creation, engaging an audience, and what does that mean in growth and numbers standpoint?
Sure. I think the fact that the amount of time an audience member spends with a streamer, content creator, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's live, or watching an esports game, the amount of time that an audience member spends with any given content creator is exponentially more than something that you would interact with on television or movies. A streamer might be on for 8 hours a day, and that is that much possibility of time to spend with that person, to understand them, to get to know them, for them to interact back with you, and to get a really genuine feel of who they are. And so that engagement, when a content creator works with any sort of campaign or paid programming, that authenticity comes through because they know who you are. They've spent that much time with you. So if at any given time you are now saying, oh, well, this video game came out, or this company is someone I'm partnering with, or whatnot, there is a level of trust there because of the amount of time you're able to spend with the person who is representing that. So I think that's a really, really unique thing that's been happening with the launch of social media and all these different outlets for content creators to be able to use. It's so different from what celebrity status used to be, where it was just a commercial thrown at you. And now I think companies understand so much about using the voices that we have each individually have created within our audience. The way I talk to my audience might be very different from another creator. And diversifying your content creation is also really different and really, really good as well. Any company looking at our Facebook content is very different from our YouTube content, which is also different from our Instagram content. So I think understanding that each one lends a different voice is an important thing to realize.
And can you give a little bit more insight into exactly that? When one of the corporations in the audience is approaching a content creator, and then Jason, we'll go to you with more of the professional content, what are the things that you would advise them right away as far as thinking about channels? Because there are a lot of media agencies and a lot of brands that don't get it. So to them, a post with Cristiano Ronaldo is the exact same with a post with a gaming content creator. A overlay on, a League of Legends tournament world championships is the exact same as an overlay over a content creator. How would you subscribe that a business thinks about how they spend their money, and what is the difference in engagement?
I think we're in a really interesting tipping point as far as content creators go, because we're reaching that 10-year span now of however long content creators have been around for. Some, of course, have launched their businesses way later in the game and have gotten really big really quickly. But I think seeking out companies that have been around for a long time, content creators that have been around for a long time, is really important for brands. Do all the stalking as possible, I would say, on content creators you want to work with, because I think a good track record doesn't lie. For Smosh, we have worked with so many different brands, so many years, time and time again, and with returning brands as well. And I think that sort of track record is something that is really important as we move along with bigger campaigns, especially in the gaming industry. And I had another thought, but it's now gone.
Awesome. We'll come back to you. Think about how you grow that engagement, and that's what we'll come back to you for you on. So Jason, now dealing with the corporations that come into Battlefy, that's more of a professional or community environment. It's easier for them to understand. It is a competition, like you said. It is team against team. We can build some loyalties. We can get some natural drama out of that maybe a content creator has to manufacture. So is it easier for you to approach businesses and lay out your product and why they should get involved? What are the challenges? What are the advantages you see?
Wow, that's a very interesting question, actually. I never thought about it that way, given that, yes, we do work with quite a number of Fortune 500 consumer-facing brands. And the point that you just made about the advantages of having a format of content that the buyers understand intrinsically, you're absolutely right. Yes, there's an advantage to that. And the advantage comes from the fact that they already, most of them, sponsor amateur sports leagues, right? Or professional sports leagues. And the concept of owning a sports league themselves automatically has values attached to that you don't have to explain. The Coca-Cola example that I gave beforehand, one thing I forgot to mention was Coca-Cola actually has a soccer league in the US, which actually most people don't know about. It's all called the Coca-Cola Copa. It's actually a real soccer league. So the idea of an esports league came from that. So I think combining that, the recognition, the pre-existing recognition of the value of creating competitions to what is intrinsic to gaming and esports, which we already talked about, which was when you're talking about digital-first audiences, their expectations of what kind of content they will view, how they will interact with the creators is absolutely crucial to the success of that creator, that content, and that brand. And this is something that is very different than in traditional linear or sports. And so when the brands do come to creators like ours or platforms like ours, they expect to essentially combine the traditional things they know with the new ideas that attract the younger audiences.
Cool. And now, Mari, from the content creator side, can you take us a little bit of what is the life of a content creator, like the life cycle, how do they grow, how do they engage? We spoke about authenticity before. How do you manufacture that, or how do you keep it real when you're engaging in audiences, especially as you're adding corporations and getting paid for it?
Sure, yeah. Authenticity is such a buzzword, and it's one of these things that we think that we can put in a bottle and repackage. We've been in the game for a long time. Smosh has been around for nearly, I want to say, since 2005. So I think, again, it's going back to the experience. We are a comedy brand, a group of actual friends who are able to sit in a room and play video games and have fun. Bringing that to the table every time we play a video game, we just have to experience that on and off camera. And I think that's just something that we've learned to do over time for longevity. Longevity in this space is, it's important. There's been a lot of talk of burnout, and I think the one way that we've stayed on top is having a team, and having that team and having voices to bounce off of ideas is the reason why we've stayed afloat. Because sometimes you have to be called on your bullshit, and if you don't have a team that doesn't, then you got to find another team. As far as the day-to-day, I mean, I think for us, whether we're working with a brand or not, throwing ideas onto the table, just wild ones, wacky ones, bucket list items, is always just something that we've always done. And if we can find a brand that can manage those dreams for us, awesome. If we can't, then it's something that we pull out of our pockets and say, this is worth it. But again, it's been the idea of being able to scale that entertainment for us, whether it's working with a brand or not. Being able to do Let's Play videos on a shoestring budget with one person, a camera, and a PC, or hiring an international team to go to Egypt to do a launch for a AAA title like Assassin's Creed, which is something that we did. We went to Egypt, we took 2 cast members, one being myself, and we launched that game with a big dream of mine, which was to ride camels and go to the Pyramid of Giza and tie that back to a real life experience and how we bring video games into real life. And so, I think it's finding the right companies to manage those dreams has been both rewarding and just really interesting in the sense that we're able to keep our voices and finding the right companies that allow us to keep those voices.
Very cool. Adam, hearing all about that, managing those dreams, accessing those dreams, helping make those dreams real, as one of the people who now needs to work with esports, how do you feel like your company can help to make that a reality?
I guess listening to some of the conversation here, there actually are a lot of parallels, I think, with traditional sport. And I think if you look at, and entertainment, actually, I think these days people can actually see through a lack of authenticity, one. And I think, particularly with brands, I think they actually do try to engage with content. I think the days of logo slapping are a bit gone. You could walk through a shopping mall, walk out, and probably not remember 10 of the shops you walk past because there's so many logos around. You could watch a sports program and not be able to name 3 of the TV commercials you saw throughout that broadcast. I think you're a bit desensitized to it. So a lot of brands, some that are more at the forefront, like Red Bull. Red Bull went, we're not just going to stick our logo on the car, we're going to actually buy the Formula One team. We're not actually just going to have a team participating in a sport, we're actually going to create our own sporting competition like a Red Bull Air Race or whatever. And then we're not just going to do that, we're going to own the media that actually delivers it, so they have control over the content, and then the brand is actually just so intertwined within the content that it has to have that authenticity, I guess. So I think moving forward, certainly that's what the brands, I think, are looking for, and ways of actually finding that in football and these types of sports, maybe where the rights are so controlled by the sports rights holder, it can be a little bit challenging, but it's something that certainly from a venues place where we have a large number of different types of events across the year, and not just events. We have 15 million people that just walk through the precinct, use the shopping mall, etc., is something that we look to do, to provide those opportunities for our sponsors and corporates to be able to engage their brands, because the more connected they can get with the audience, I guess the more memorable the brand is going to be to that audience, and the more that there's going to be an alignment between the two. So I think number one is you need to know your audience. Number two, you need to know your brand and what your brand stands for, and I think then you need to have a look, a feel, a language that speaks with your audience, and brand values that align very closely with the audience. If you have that, then it's really just about, I guess, creating content which is engaging. So I'm actually not sure exactly whether I answered the question, but I think just listening to what Murray was saying, I think that we see it also within, it's relevant to traditional sports that we work with. Yeah.
Great. I mean, it's always better when the moderator barely even has to say anything. So, that was a great path to take it on. And actually, we can expound on that a little bit, especially considering the audience. So a lot of you out there are brands. You've got to figure out how you're going to interact with new content creators, the venues that are focused on esports and gaming, the tournament platforms that are also a chance for your audience to interact. How do you do it? How do you stay authentic? How do you think about these things? I think the panelists did a great job of laying out a few things, which was know your values, know your brand, know your audience. If you don't know your values and your brand and your audience internally, it's going to be incredibly difficult to then reach out to the different players in industry and really give a good plan as to how you want your brand to interact. Another thing is wacky, dreamy, that came from Mari in the middle. So one of the hardest things for brands is how do we let go a little bit? This new media thing, again, as head of APAC for Twitch, when I was speaking to brands, it was difficult because I had to say, you've got to let go a little bit. You don't control these environments. You can't make this so tailored that, from start to finish, short of a VOD that you've paid a creator for, you can control and dictate the entire message. How do you get comfortable with that? Authenticity, I think. Knowing that your audience and their audiences are fans and evangelists of the content that's being made. So therefore, you want access to further evangelize your brand. Let go a little bit. Let your brand and the audience tell you what you are, and then adapt that to your core value, your core message. So with that in mind, maybe back to Jason for a little bit. So especially when you're dealing with live, you've got all this great tournament coverage. We all know and this is again tying back to traditional athletes, we all know that gamers have their moments. And the worst thing to a brand right now is a gamer has one of those moments where they freak out, they curse, they do something, and there's a big logo behind them of a brand that's kind of like, I asked for family friendly. How do you explain to brands, especially as the platform, as you may be one of the people kind of blamed for that, how do you explain to brands that that's okay, all these moments are great for what they need?
That's a tough one. The reason that it's tough is because the relevance piece that we're talking about here, the authenticity piece, almost requires that level of interaction and use of language, which for traditional brands and family friendliness is absolutely contrarian to what they believe in. And so what the industry has been doing over the last few years, and I would say Korea has been leading the way on this, which is the professionalization of these gaming athletes, in which they have PR teams. They get trained like any celebrity to everything on what to say in interviews, how do you dress, how do you walk, how do you do interviews. So that professionalization is going to go a long way to addressing some of those concerns that traditional media has. The challenge is to balance that professionalization with the authenticity, and I don't have an answer to that.
I think we can all honestly say none of us know the answer to that right now. But what it does mean, especially from the brand standpoint, is you should roll with the creators too, because at the end of the day, how big is your audience now?
Well, Smosh combined between 3 channels, we have 38 million subscribers.
Right, so 38 million engaged subscribers for 8 hours a day. As a brand, you must want that. But unfortunately, you can't dictate how Mari speaks to her audience. So again, it's about getting comfortable around how the environment works, how you gain evangelism, understanding the downstream benefit to your company for engaging through content creation, through gaming, through what is really now current media, not really next media. Speaking a little bit about the trolls, though, since we got onto family friendly, Mari, how did you handle them before, and how do you handle them now? As we all know, social media is famous for not only its great content and now higher production, but those aggressive people that come after you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the gaming industry for sure gets a bad rep with trolls, but I think the truth of the matter is trolls exist in every single industry. And that's, I mean, that's going from your office. There just might be somebody who just doesn't treat you right. Sorry. In real life, and that sometimes just gets exponentially bigger online. The very first thing that I was told by Anthony Padilla, who is my senpai and the person, one of the co-founders of Smosh, is don't feed the trolls. And I think that's one of the best piece of advice I was given. Being the third member of Smosh and the only girl to have ever been on the channel, in 2010, when I started with them, I believe I had a 50% like to dislike on every single video that I was on. For about, I want to say 8 months, every single video. And, Ian and Anthony had been around on YouTube for 5 years at that point. They had never had videos with a like to dislike ratio that low before. And yet, they had all the confidence in the world. And they said, it'll pass. Just keep making videos. Just keep pumping those videos out. And the audience that wants to see you will find you, and they'll remain. And it's so true. I think creators get really bogged down by numbers, by what people say, trolls, and things like that. And the truth is, you just have to, if you love it enough, you have to just keep making content. With that said, I think it makes it exceedingly difficult now when this career of being a YouTuber, being a content creator, being a streamer, being an esports player is an actual career path. When I started, it was not a career. It wasn't a viable thing to put your time and energy into. So there was a lot less pressure back then. I had a professional career outside of gaming and outside of YouTube. But now there is this pressure to be the best of the best because it's an actual career. I think the way I deal with trolls now is the same as I did back then. I either ignore or I engage in a friendly way, which is, I speak to them as I probably would in a normal conversation, being like, dude, okay, you don't like it, what's up? Like, what's going on? As opposed to being really combative, because that doesn't do any good for anybody. I think trolls exist everywhere, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
And so again, switching back to how that goes to the corporations, the brands, et cetera, same thing for you guys. If trolls come on your social media, if people are coming after you, don't worry about it. It's actually an opportunity to engage with the client in most ways. Other times, it's just worth it to ignore. An interesting corporate example for any of you who are looking for, again, large companies interacting with each other in a new media type of way, I think is the Wendy's Twitter account that a lot of people know. So if you look up the Wendy's Twitter account, one day, basically, Wendy's gave it to a younger, I'm going to guess millennial just by what they're writing, and said, have at it. And what Wendy's Twitter account ended up doing was making fun of everything on Twitter. So it became a lot less about Wendy's as a brand and a lot more about connecting with the audience that they were battling for, because at the end of the day, the difference between Burger King, Wendy's, Chick-fil-A, et cetera, in the United States especially, is generally about 2 blocks of real estate and not a whole lot of times of interaction. So Wendy's took it upon themselves to say, you know what? No, we're just going to engage in the audience in an authentic way, and every time somebody comes at us, we're going to go back at them. They kept it brand friendly. There's nothing dirty or whatever, but it's hilarious. And what it led to was a lot of retweets, a lot of interaction, and a lot of people, again, taking a brand that maybe was, not staid, but certainly difficult to create differentiation. And they differentiated by connecting with the audience. So with that in mind, thanks again, panel, for everything so far. Now let's go a little right field and try to throw you guys off a bit. Let's talk about growth in the future. So Jason, how do you see the growth of esports specifically in the next 3 to 5 years, and how does that play into how you're prepping Battlefy?
The industry is is professionalizing one first and foremost, structuring. So it's going from a completely Wild West, no rules, complete chaos, into some structure, some standardization, which is amazing. The biggest focus for most companies in the space, whether you're endemic or not endemic, is making sure that you carve out the right audience within that 250 to 500 million players, know what you're going after, and how you're going to reach them through the different channels, through the different content, and through the different influencers within this space. So there are many models that's being tested right now within esports, many of which have been adopted from traditional sports. We've yet to see that prove out, but we're very bullish on those models evolving to a place where they will make sense in the industry. They will make sense to the broadcasting business and as well as the media buying business. Once those standardizations and rules get there, then that's when you're going to see a huge shift in media spend, particularly around traditional sports, into esports. And the reason is actually pretty simple, because it costs about a tenth right now to engage with the exact same audience. And by the way, because it's digital first, you get way more data than you could ever have than in linear. So that's I think where the opportunities are.
Awesome. So a lot more money and incredible data that makes everything clear to you, as promised by Jason on the stage at All That Matters. You can mark that down. Adam, so you've now done partnerships around esports with One. Where do you see that growing? Where do you see that impacting both your bottom line and how you relate with the government?
Yeah, obviously, for us, I guess one of the examples that I often use about a venue, you have something like Old Trafford, Manchester United play 35 matches a year there. It's always full, but it's 70,000, basically the same 70,000 people that go every match because they've got a season ticket. It's always full, but you get the same 70,000 people. Again, one stadium, one arena. We need to have a diverse event portfolio that actually provides an opportunity for more Singaporeans to actually come down and engage with our facility. So as a piece of social infrastructure, that's, I guess, one of the objectives. And so esports fulfills, I guess, a role there. We're certainly not going to develop our own esports competition or property, so we have to work with partners like One and like PGL and these types of partners, in the same way as we do with One Fighting Championship, with UFC, with World Rugby for Rugby Sevens, etc. In terms, I guess, of the future from a venue perspective, I think really where there are some simple wins. So some of those are obviously, making sure that we have strong Wi-Fi capability around the venue. I was at the TI a couple of weeks ago and went to the bathroom, and cubicle door was closed, and I could hear the commentary coming really loud from in the cubicle. And so someone had left the arena to do his business and was still connected to the event from there. So if he has that kind of convenience at home and we're trying to get him to come and enjoy the event at an arena, we need to make sure that there is that same sort of convenience there. So Wi-Fi capability and I guess the experiential elements, that's the stuff that I think I'm quite excited to see develop in the future, and that's the stuff that maybe wraps around the esports, and whether that's it'll be probably technology led and I guess emerging between virtual and physical worlds, and seeing how you can develop that in a scale that you can't have at home, and that you have to go to a venue to be able to experience. And I think that type of thing is stuff where sponsors can actually really be able to engage with their customers.
As far as us being getting to expand, not sure if everybody is privy to Defy Media and the fact that we were tied to that company beforehand, but for the first time in Smosh history, we really have a good handle on where our company is going without a huge corporate structure. And so we're kind of in new territory right now. We're able to expand in the way that we want to. And one of the reasons why I'm here is because we want to expand globally. And we have the freedom to do that now, which is incredible. As far as a content creator goes, it's being able to throw spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks again. So it's really empowering and it's really beautiful to be in this position. And then again, I think it's being able to I don't know, go back to the drawing board and figure out what those big dreams are. We've always been gaming parallel or gaming adjacent in the sense that we play video games, we enjoy it. We're also really all about experiencing those video games in real life. So being able to tackle what we do in a game like, let's say, parkour or an epic fight scene or learning how to do CIA things and then experiencing that in real life. And so with that, plus a comedy brand, plus a cast member of extremely talented young people who just absolutely love what they do. I mean, I think it's kind of boundless at the moment.
Awesome. So if you take nothing away from today, I would definitely say that toward the end we got to experience the experience. So definitely as you get through the rest of the conference, please talk to our panelists and talk about their experiences as well as how you tie into their audiences and how you can start to create, because a big part of where we are in the ecosystem of gaming and esports is the creation of new experiences, which means as a brand, you get to do that alongside the experts in industry. There are not many of them, but luckily, All That Matters has done a great job of bringing quite a few together this week, including our fine panelists, Jason, Mari, Adam, thank you so much. And yep, if you have any questions, we are definitely around for the rest of the day. Thank you so much, panelists.
Thank you.